I want to start today by throwing out everything we usually assume about why people quit their jobs.
Oh, that is a big statement right out of the gate.
Right. But we have this script in our heads. You picture the exit interview, the awkward HR meeting.
Yeah.
And it's always, the salary was too low, the commute was soul-crushing, or the boss was a micromanager.
The classic people leave managers, not companies line. It's comforting because it feels fixable. If it's the manager, fire the manager. If it's the money, just give a raise.
Precisely. But the deep dive we are getting into today suggests that for a huge percentage of the workforce, none of those individual factors are the actual primary trigger.
Right.
The number one predictor of whether you walk out the door isn't about you or your boss or your paycheck. It's about who else just left.
We are looking at the social domino effect.
It's a bit unnerving, honestly. We have a stack of sources here today, including some heavy data from Visier, and reports on something called the stability engine that argue retention is actually a contagion.
Yeah, it's a viral phenomenon.
And the scary part is most companies are trying to cure a virus with, a pizza party.
Or a slightly better dental plan. But you're right, the core concept here is network contagion. It shifts the view of the workplace from a collection of individuals to a complex living network.
And in a network, behavior spreads.
Let's look at the raw numbers first, because the Visier research from 2023 lays this out with terrifying precision. They identified a specific danger zone after a resignation.
Yes, the 135-day window. The data shows that when a key member of a team departs, the quit probability for their remaining peers spikes by 25%.
25%.
Exactly. And that risk remains elevated for roughly 4.5 months, that 135-day window.
That is a massive spike. And the 135 days is a long time to be looking over your shoulder wondering who's next.
It is. And think about what happens in that window. It's the grieving period of a team.
Yeah.
The social fabric has a hole in it. Workloads shift, stress goes up. But more importantly, the social proof that this is a good place to work has just walked out the building. It effectively breaks the spell.
Right.
But what I found fascinating in the sources is that this doesn't happen every single time someone quits. If the summer intern leaves, the VP of sales doesn't panic. This is where we get into the physics of it. The sources talk about power laws and central connectors.
This is crucial because traditional HR metrics tend to work on averages. They look at turnover like a bell curve where everyone is sort of equally likely to leave.
Right.
But network theory says no, human relationships follow a power law distribution.
Which is a fancy way of saying it's lumpy.
Exactly. It's lumpy and disproportionate. Think about epidemiology when they track a disease. In a standard flu model, maybe everyone has a random chance of catching it. But in a super spreader model...
Or a zombie outbreak.
Right. If you want to be dramatic about it, it matters who gets bit first.
So in the office, we have super spreaders of resignation.
We call them central connectors or social notes, and these aren't necessarily the people with the fancy titles.
Are the executives?
Usually not. They are the people who hold the invisible threads of the office together. They plan the happy hours, they know everyone's birthday, they bridge the gap between marketing and engineering.
We all know the org chart is a fiction, right?
Right.
We pretend the hierarchy is how work gets done, but the shadow network is real reality.
And that's where the danger lies. If a peripheral person, someone on the edge of the spider web leaves, the web barely moves. But if you cut a central node, the structural tension of the entire web changes.
The math just shifts.
The mathematical pull on the remaining connections becomes overwhelming.
And the sources argue that traditional HR tools are blind to this because they're looking at the individual. They see that Bob resigned. They don't see that Bob was the load-bearing wall for the morale of 5 other high performers.
Right. They treat every resignation as a unit of one. But in reality, when a central connector leaves, you aren't losing one employee. You are triggering a collapse event. You are losing the glue.
So, we have established that your current team is a fragile web. But the sources take this a step further, and this is where I think this deep dive gets really practical and a little controversial. They pivot to hiring.
The concept of imported instability.
This flipped my perspective completely. Usually, if a competitor's tanking, say their stock is down 40%, everyone is fleeing. Recruiters are high-fiving.
Oh, absolutely.
They think, great, it's a fire sale on talent. Let's go poach their stars.
That is the standard playbook. Go where the chaos is, offer a lifeboat, and snag a high performer. But the stability engine data suggests that hiring from an exodus cluster, that's the term for a collapsing team, is actually a hazard.
Because you're not just hiring a person. you're importing the virus.
It's a double risk profile. First, you have the risk to the candidate themselves. The data indicates that someone hired out of a collapsing network is statistically twice as likely to exit their new job within the first year.
Twice as likely,
Yeah.
which makes sense if you think about the psychology.
Yeah.
They aren't running toward your company's mission. They're running away from a burning building.
Exactly. It's a panic move. They grab the first exit door available. Once their nervous system regulates and they realize they took a job they don't actually love, they leave again. They are rebound hires.
But the second risk is the one that really worries me. The team contagion risk. This is the idea that you bring this person in and they act as a contagion vector for your existing happy team.
This is the social virus theory. You bring in a leader who has just spent 6 months fighting a losing battle at a failing company. They are burnt out, they are cynical, they are hypervigilant.
Yeah.
They carry that network trauma right into your conference room.
The sources cite that case study the market leader hire. A company hired a VP from a failing competitor. Great resume. But within 6 months, 3 people on the new team resigned. The new hire destabilized a perfectly healthy ecosystem.
Because anxiety is communicable. If your new boss acts like the sky is falling, because at their last job, it was eventually the team starts looking up to check for debris, it triggers a domino effect in a building that was previously stable.
So how do we stop it? If we accept that this network contagion is real, are we just supposed to blacklist anyone coming from a bad company? That seems extreme.
It's not about blacklisting, it's about auditing. The sources outline this stability engine methodology. It proposes that instead of just auditing the candidate, you audit the former node, the environment they are leaving.
And they put a number on it, the node risk score.
Right. It's an actuarial metric. They calculate a risk score based on things like tenure overlap, velocity of internal transfers at the old firm, and the density of the exodus cluster they are coming from.
The threshold mentioned is 0.7.
Yes. Teams with a node risk score above 0.7 saw a 40% higher attrition rate within 6 months of that key member joining. That 0.7 is the tipping point where the virus overwhelms the host immune system.
Okay, so let's say you run the numbers. You really want this candidate. They are brilliant, but their node risk score is screaming red. They are coming from a disaster zone.
Do you hire them?
You can, but you can't just onboard them like a normal hire. This is where the decontamination playbook comes in.
I want to get granular on this because onboarding is usually just filling out tax forms and getting a laptop. The decontamination protocols described here are much more aggressive. It almost reads like a detox program.
It has to be. The goal isn't just integration, it's breaking the trauma bond with the previous network. One of the tactics mentioned is the expectation reset.
Which is what exactly?
It's a series of structured conversations in the first 30 days where you explicitly map out the differences between how things work there and how things work here. You are actively buffering against the imported instability. You are telling them you don't need to fight that battle anymore. That war is over.
The sources also mention something that sounds like a blackout period. Essentially advising the new hire to limit engagement with their former colleagues for the first 90 days. It sounds harsh, right? Don't talk to your friends. But from a network physics perspective, it's completely necessary. If they're spending their lunch break texting their former team about how awful the layoffs are over there, they are keeping that stress pathway open. They are reinfecting themselves daily.
So decontamination is really about severing those old threads so the new ones can attach.
Precisely. You are artificially lowering their node risk score by cutting the inputs that are causing the anxiety.
This whole system, predicting resignations, mapping these invisible threads, it implies a level of surveillance that we need to talk about. This isn't just asking, how are you feeling? This is big data entering the HR chat.
This is the technical deep dive part. The actuarial architecture behind this is complex. It involves mapping pure movement data into a massive network graph. You are tracking the movement of thousands of employees over time and applying power law analysis to spot clusters that deviate from the historical baselines.
But the catch is the data quality. The phrase garbage in, garbage out appears in the research about 10 times.
It's the Achilles heel of the whole system. The source emphasizes that you need about 90% completeness in your movement logs and relationship mappings. They found that if you are missing just 15% of the peer links, so you don't know who 15% of the people are talking to, the detection accuracy drops by up to 22%.
That is a steep drop-off. It means you can't just dabble in this. You either track everything or the model breaks.
And that track everything requirement is where we hit the privacy wall. Because to really map the shadow network to find out who the real central connectors are, you can't rely on the org chart. As we said, the org chart is a lie.
So they turn to communication data.
Slack metadata, email traffic patterns, calendar invites, that's how you find the hidden threads. You see that the junior analyst is actually emailing the CEO every day, or that the marketing manager is in every single Slack channel.
Which is technically feasible, but it feels creepy. It's the big brother problem. If I know my company is mapping my node connections to predict if I'm going to quit, I'm going to start acting differently.
That's the observer effect. And it leads us directly to the ethical tightrope. We are talking about assigning a risk score to a human being based on the failure of their previous employer.
I struggled with this part of the deep dive. Imagine being a great employee. You worked hard, you did your job, but the company failed. You try to leave, and suddenly you were flagged as a high-risk hire. It feels like a scarlet letter. Oh, you came from that startup. Sorry, your risk score is 0.8.
It's a form of algorithmic bias. It's guilt by network association. And the danger is that hiring managers who are already busy will see that red flag and just move to the next resume. It's easier than doing the decontamination work.
So are we effectively creating a permanent underclass of unhireable people just because they had bad luck with their previous employer?
That is the worst case scenario. The counter-argument, which the sources touch on, is transparency. There is a pilot program mentioned where they use candidate-facing summaries.
Showing the candidate their own score.
Yes. They say, here is your network risk profile. It turns the data into a conversation starter rather than a verdict. You can say, look, the data suggests you might be burnt out or flighty because of where you came from. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that is the key phrase. The algorithm points out where to look, but a human has to decide what they are seeing.
Exactly. The data might look like a contagion, but maybe that candidate was the one person fighting to save the ship. Maybe they are resilient, not toxic. The algorithm can't measure character. It can only measure movement.
You still need the qualitative layer.
Yeah.
Exit interviews, peer feedback, actual human judgment. If you let the stability engine run on autopilot, you're going to make some very cruel mistakes.
But if you ignore the data completely, you are going to get blindsided by resignations that were mathematically predictable.
So where does this leave us? We've covered the science of contagion, the risks of importing instability, the decontamination tactics, and the ethical mess of tracking it all. For you listening, whether you are leading a team or just working in one, what is the actionable takeaway here?
The big shift is to stop looking at the person in front of you in isolation. We are all nodes in a network.
So when you are hiring, don't just look at the resume. Look at the web they are leaving.
And look at the web they are entering. Ask yourself, is my team stable enough to absorb a high-risk node right now? Do we have the capacity to run the decontamination playbook? Because if you drop a stressed-out survivor into a fragile team, you are going to break the team.
And for you listening, maybe you are the one leaving the Exodus cluster. It's worth recognizing that you might be carrying more than just a box of personal items. You're carrying the stress of that network collapse.
Self-decontamination is a real thing. Give yourself that grace period. Recognize the pull of the old job so you don't sabotage the new one.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over. It's something that kept coming up for me while reading these sources. We are getting shockingly good at predicting human behavior with data. We can map the threads, predict the snaps, assign risk scores to your relationship.
It's incredibly powerful tech.
It is. But are we using this power to prevent burnout and actually help people thrive? Or are we just building a more sophisticated way to treat human beings like assets in a stock portfolio, hedging our bets and selling off the risks before they crash?
Are we building a safety net, or are we just optimizing the machine?
Next time a recruiter calls you, ask yourself, are they hiring me or are they buying an insurance policy against their own turnover?
That really is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.